No Ugly, yes please. No Ugly is created in New Zealand by a small, determined and innovative team whose mission is to eradicate ugly. It's inherent in the ingredients we choose, the products we create and our business values and behaviours. We are proud to be part of the global wellness movement, making a difference for the wellness of our people and our planet, right here from the cleanest, greenest country at the bottom of the world. No Ugly's range of functional beverages are scientifically formulated to get you back to gorgeous. With natural ingredients, they've created a truly functional range of beverages with proven health claims. And unlike any other health drinks, their entire line is low sugar but taste amazeballs. Get back to gorgeous with No Ugly skin and 10 grams of marine collagen. Detox, the hangover dream. Hydrate, like an isotonic rain in the desert. Libido, yes, yes, yes. Immunity, it's to live for. Sleep, sweet dreams. Focus, your personal laser. Gut, for shits and giggles. And now calm, it's like a cuddle from your mum. They have 3 different formats, 2 50ml glass bottles, 3 30ml cans, and now 100ml glass shots. No Ugly, yes please. This is the I Quit Sugar podcast, unprocessed, brought to you by No Ugly Wellness Tonics. Hi, I'm JJ from I Quit Sugar.
And I'm Peter, founder of Goodness Me, which is your go-to good-for-you grocery store. We're here out of a deep desire to help you live your healthiest life. We've both been through health journeys which have been transformative in how we live our lives and approach each day. After learning how to manage my autoimmune condition through food and lifestyle, I realised that we live in a world where we are overfed and undernourished. But it can be as easy as some simple changes that can have a huge impact on how your body operates and how you feel day to day.
I've also been through a very confusing and oftentimes overwhelming health journey, which started with gut dysbiosis and developed into thyroid issues and now an autoimmune condition that I'm still learning about. We don't want you guys to go through what we have. It can be a lonely, overwhelming and often conflicting and confusing world. So we're hoping that these conversations inspire you to dig a bit deeper, cut through the noise and help you live a healthier life. Health is wealth at the end of the day. So I Quit Sugar are bringing you an 8-episode series where we interview some incredible people who have so much wisdom to share on different areas of health and well-being. It's our hope these conversations inspire you to take control of your health and live your fullest life in the process.
Our guest today is Luka McCabe, the founder of Boob to Food, but more importantly, mum of 3 beautiful children, Flynn, Florence and Will. She's a registered midwife, nurse, birth and parenting educator, and a certified nutrition consultant specialising in postpartum and babies' nutrition. Also the proud author to best-selling book, Milk to Meals. Her passion lies with educating mothers, fathers and caregivers, specifically in the areas surrounding starting solids, toddler meals and nutritional information for the postpartum mother. She likes to focus on whole foods that are nutrient-dense, easy to prepare and enjoyable for the whole family, because who has time to really make multiple meals? She hopes to inspire you to think differently about food, to think about what benefits it can have to your body and to feel the best that you can feel. Luka, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on.
I am so excited to speak to you because I had so many friends say to me, Boob to Food, Boob to Food. You've got to look at Boob to Food when you are doing solids or starting to give your baby purees. But I only got that information after I'd already done that. So I'm very excited to be speaking to you now.
Oh, how old is your little one?
She's turning 2 next week.
Nice.
Yes. Yeah. So we wanted to start by asking you really what's one ritual you did this morning to set you up for the day?
Every morning, now that my little one's older, I go to the gym every morning and that's how I like to start my day. So I do F45, usually 5, hopefully 6 times a week. And that's how I start, with a bit of time to myself.
Amazing. Love that. So you're one of the leaders in Australia on starting your baby on solids and how to do that in a really nutritionally dense way. Can you talk us through how Boob to Food began and what inspired you to start it?
Yeah, so it started when my daughter was nearly 6 months old. So she's nearly 5 now. She's my middle child. And I guess it started because I went to the GP and they told me that she needed to start solids at 4 months of age. And this really didn't sit very well with me because the reason they wanted her to start was that she was quote unquote small for her age. So she was sitting on around the second percentile. And the thing is, though, is that she always was on the second percentile and she still is on the second percentile. So in her regards, she wasn't like dropping off of the weight scales or not thriving. She was a beautiful, healthy, very settled, happy baby. But because she was small, they wanted us to start early. And she wasn't showing any signs of readiness. And I just thought, oh, I don't think that she's ready to start. And what they wanted me to start at home was rice cereal, which really didn't sit well with me at all because I just thought this isn't going to meet her needs. If she was too small, this isn't going to provide any more calories than breast milk will. And anyway, so it kind of frustrated me because I was told the same advice with my son to start him on the same food, and he's nearly 8 now. And we went down a different pathway, and it was just frustrating me that the same things were being recommended, even though there was so much more information out there. But you really had to search for the information. Like, it was hard to find. You couldn't just access it easily through Instagram like it is now. So I started an Instagram account, called it Boob to Food. Didn't think anything of it. And it was always designed just to be a account on showing what I was serving Florence, my daughter, but also more importantly, the why I was choosing to serve her certain foods and why babies need certain nutrients and what foods can provide those nutrients and how we can best set them up for a good start to life. So I kind of just started it on a whim, thought it would be fun. I was I was on maternity leave when I started. I think I was a bit bored, probably why. My background is that I'm a midwife and I'm also a nurse, but I didn't have any nutritional training at all. It was just my own learning and information sourcing and just a passion for it. And I guess when I was serving my elder son, who's nearly 8, his foods, I used to get a lot of questions about them because it was quote unquote those strange foods that I was offering him. So foods like liver and bone marrow and bone broth and foods that we ate that were really nutrient dense is what his first foods were. And I would get the comments like, oh, poor child, you're serving him that, or, people feeling sorry for him that he didn't get, the just apple puree. I mean, there's nothing wrong with apple puree, but, just that or just rice cereal, etc., that he was being fed all these weird and wonderful foods. But I guess, yeah, as I started sharing things, I think Instagram was becoming a bit more of a platform for sharing information and education. And so I just kept going and the momentum grew really quickly. And so I've been trying to play catch up ever since with it, really. We're now a team of, I ended up studying just a nutrition consultancy for babies and postpartum. And then now we're a team of 3. So I've got a nutritionist and naturopath, Kate, and then I've also got a dietitian that works with me. And we also have a clinic of 5 naturopaths and nutritionists as well that now work for Boob to Food as well. So it's all happening. But yeah, it's definitely grown and expanded, which is amazing. And we brought out our first book a couple of years ago, Milk to Meals, which has been, really successful, which is great.
I love that. Amazing.
Yeah.
Really
So good.
Great business bought out of maternity leave as well, great things we can do during that time.
I think you get a bit of a creative kind of, like spark sometimes. It was funny with my third, it was like I had I think because I didn't get that actual maternity leave because I had quit midwifery by then because this business had really taken off. And it was also like the height of COVID. He was a full COVID baby. So I left that job and Yeah, felt like I didn't get that creativity the third time around. Maybe a third child, or maybe just because it's your own business. But
Yeah,
second time, it was definitely nice, and I played on that momentum. And I wrote the book while we were traveled Australia in a caravan for a year. So I wrote the book while we lived in the caravan, which was fun.
wow, what an experience. That sounds
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, it was good.
So, I mean, you touched on a lot about the controversy and the advice that you get when you do start solids with your baby.
Mm.
What sort of, maybe you can explain for others out there, the controversy around that, why there is such conflicting advice, and really what are the actual guidelines for starting solids? Because I know going through that personally myself, it was a very confusing time. You're juggling a million different things to go and do all this research and stuff. Like, it's hard. You just want someone to tell you really what to do. So,
And everyone has an opinion.
Yes, exactly.
That's motherhood, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm still perplexed at why it's considered controversial, because the guidelines were changed a long time ago. I think back in it was 2018 that they changed that. So for a while, a period, it was to start your baby at around the 4-month mark. That was the advice. But then, as research has grown and data has grown, and studies that we've seen, that is more beneficial to wait until your baby is around the 6-month mark. So those guidelines were changed years ago. However, it's still taking quite a lot of health practitioners a while to catch up to the new guidelines. And I think a lot of practitioners still under the impression that starting solids will help with weight or will help with sleeping, which has not been shown to be true. I mean, your baby would have to eat a lot of solids to help with their weight, because breast milk or formula has way higher calories, so it's more beneficial to get a lactation consultant on board, or look into the formula and things like that, rather than starting a teaspoon of solids a day, which isn't going to do a lot. So the biggest thing, though, is not so much an age. The reason that the guidelines were changed is because around that mark is when babies will show the signs of readiness. So we're looking at developmental signs of readiness, and like all babies walk at different ages, they talk at different ages, they're also ready for solids at different ages. But I'm really yet to meet a baby under 5.5 months that shows all of the signs. They generally speaking, you want to be looking for a little one. The biggest thing is that they're sitting unassisted. And for some babies, this actually won't, a lot of them won't meet that until closer to the 8-month mark. But basically, the idea is that if you were to pop them into a high chair, that they're not slumping forward or to the sides, or have like a real, those dashboard dolls and their head bobbles.
Yeah.
Them, you don't want them doing that. A bobblehead. You don't want any bobbleheads. So you want them to have really nice core, trunk, and stability, and you also want them to have lots of neck and postural stability as well. And the reason being is, one, that shows that their digestive muscles are ready to actually digest the food that you're offering them. So there's a muscle-like movement, peristalsis, that needs to happen, where the food is moved through, all of the intestines and out of the bowel, to hopefully they don't get blocked up and constipated. So that, that's a good indication that that's probably working well if they've got some core strength. Another big one is that it can be a really big choking risk if they're slumping forward, because their neck's going to be flopping forward and can occlude the airway. So that's a big one that you want to look for. And the other thing is just that their head's not boppling around too much. You want to be able to reach for food. So if you were to put their high chair, if they're either at the table or with a tray, that they can actually kind of reach for food and move for food. So that's a really big one to look for. So they might not be able to actually sit on the floor, for example, by themselves, because that can take a lot of practice. But I guess if you pop them onto your lap or into a high chair, that they could then sit upright and have that strength. So that's a big thing that we're looking for. The other thing is showing signs of interest. But I think this one is the one that confuses a lot of parents, because around that 4-month mark, they are interested in absolutely everything. And, I always say, like, they're interested in your car keys. It doesn't mean they want to drive. They're interested in everything. So you just have to be aware, like, yes, they're interested in food. And because they're watching you eat and they think, wow, what's this? This isn't, and they're grasping for it, but it's a really great sign, and it's something we want to look for, but it shouldn't be looked at in isolation. We want to be looking at it with the other signs of readiness. So And if it's getting close to that 6-month mark and your baby's not interested in food, then that's when you might want to start really ramping up eating in front of them. Because, as mothers, we can often, save lunchtime and mealtime for when they're napping, because it's nice for us to,
Yes.
eat in peace. And I fully understand that. But the only way they're going to learn how to eat is by watching us and mimicking us. So if you can, trying to eat and really exaggerate the, and biting and chewing and showing them what they have to do with the food, so that when it comes time to offering solids, they're not like, huh? What do I do with this?
Yep.
So
Yep.
they're the two big ones. Another one is that they've lost the tongue thrust reflex. That, to be honest, is usually gone by 4 months, which is a reflex where the baby's tongue will push the food back out, or anything out. It's a choking mechanism against choking, I should say. So, if anything gets into contact with their mouth, that their tongue will automatically push it out. So you can test this by putting your fingers or even like a little spoon or something into their mouth and seeing if their tongue automatically, they might do it out of funness, but it's more an automatic reflex that we're looking for. So have a look into that. And they're your big things, to be honest, that we want to be looking for. But all of the main body guidelines all recommend the same age, all around the 6-month mark. And so, yeah, I'm not quite sure where the controversy lies. The only thing that I will add is that the allergy guidelines are always changing. They've changed a lot since I even have my son, who's nearly 8. So back then, allergens were actually recommended not to introduce until they were 5. So things have changed a lot since then.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Now they're recommended to introduce them all before they're 12 months of age. But they are saying that there's some evidence now for little babies who are high risk of developing an allergy, so like a strong family history of allergies, or perhaps they have an atopic march, which is where they have things like eczema and asthma. Those little ones, they've been doing some studies on introducing the top allergens even earlier than 6 months, and around the 4-month mark, introducing things like peanut butter or other allergens. This is something, that I would discuss with an allergist or a pediatrician, not just take it upon yourself, because it's still quite emerging research there, and it's not a guideline for everyone. But I think that this might also be a bit of a point of confusion now, because that's sort of new research coming out, but it's still only targeted for those high allergy risk buds.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear, because I think a lot of mums get anxious around introducing the allergens. And I know we heard from a pediatrician too, the longer you wait, the more likely after a certain age, they might develop some kind of reaction. And we still haven't given her seafood, and now I'm too nervous. So I just need to bite the bullet.
You know what?
and
The
do
good thing
it.
is seafood tends to, well, I don't know if it's a good thing. It tends to be more of an adult allergy, seafood.
Oh,
So you
oh,
might
that's
be
good to
okay
hear.
with that one. It's
Yeah.
also the one that they don't tend to outgrow. So that's probably a good one if you were going to leave any.
Okay. Oh, that makes me feel a lot better as well. But those tips are honestly, they're such concrete examples. I would honestly write those down, because I remember being like, okay, I don't know if it's 4 or 6 in between. I just went 5-month mark. I think she's interested in food. So having those other examples there are just make it much more, I don't want to say black and white, but they're really concrete examples. Yeah. Completely. So when it comes to starting babies on solids, what kind of foods would you recommend? And in particular, things to boost their immune system. I know that was definitely a key priority for me as well.
Yeah. So I guess the thing when we're starting solids to remember is that their primary source of nutrition still needs to be breast milk or formula. And so, if you are breastfeeding, that's the best immunity that you can provide them, because it's ever changing, ever developing to what they need, which is amazing. In terms of food, I guess, all foods can be immune boosting. All, whole foods they all have different properties and amazing things. Baby's biggest requirements are iron and zinc. So they have other requirements, but the ones that breast milk or formula aren't meeting after 6 months are iron and zinc. So iron and zinc foods are the ones that you really want to pay like a strong homage to, because they are the ones that they're the nutrient that they're kind of missing. So this can sometimes stress people though, because when we start solids, sometimes they won't eat anything. Like they'll play with the food. They might like eat a teaspoon. They might lick it, and people, can get a little bit concerned because they need iron, and I fully get that, and they do need iron. And to be honest, the RDI that they need to meet for iron we think it's unachievable in even the best eater. So if that helps, we have been questioning the RDI with people because it's so high. It's higher than an adult male's that a baby needs.
Oh, wow.
And so and breast milk has, when you look at it, apparently has 0 milligrams of iron in it, which is pretty crazy. Formula does have some because it's fortified. But I think the thing to remember too is that, this is why rice cereal is often recommended because it's fortified with iron. But the thing is that the iron in rice cereal is, one, a synthetic version of iron, which isn't as well absorbed as natural sources. Two, it's not a heme source of iron, which is found in animal products only, and so they're the best absorbed by the body. Three, it doesn't have the cofactors in it to be able to absorb the iron, really well. So we need lots of things like fats and things to actually help to absorb the iron. And, there's other downsides to rice cereal, but the thing is as well, like, it's actually quite low in iron. A lot of rice cereals don't actually contain very much iron. So for us at Boob to Food, we're more into promoting whole foods for children, foods that are, we have quite a strong animal-based foods focus because those foods are the easiest way to absorb the nutrients that we need. They are the highest source of the nutrients that they need, and just an easy way to do it without supplementation. And so that's not to say we don't support people who choose a different way of feeding their child if they decide to go plant-based or vegetarian, but the reality is that heme sources of iron are the easiest way of getting your baby to get the most bang for their buck. And the body absorbs so much more of it. So it'll absorb about 25 to 40% of heme iron, whereas non-heme iron, which is found in like your plant-based foods or in the rice cereal, for example, that's absorbed about 0 to 13%. So it's quite a big difference when we're talking about needing 11 milligrams of iron a day. It's quite a big difference between the two. So the foods that we promote, I guess I feel like I've been known as someone to promote liver a lot for babies. And this was one of the foods that I fed my eldest son that everyone thought I was, horrible mum for doing.
I was with you there. And I think we had babies around the same time, at least my first two. But yeah, I was definitely one to give like egg yolk with like shaved liver on top as like a first food. And he loved, anything I gave him, thankfully.
Oh,
but I was, yeah. But yeah, it's so beneficial, right? It's the most nutrient dense thing you can give them.
Liver is, so like gram for gram, it's the highest form of pretty much every nutrient that you can get. So it's just a really good one, especially for little ones who aren't eating very much. It's a really good one to get the most that you can. We can't force our little ones to eat, and we shouldn't be wanting to force them to eat. That's not our role. Our role is to offer the food, and it's their job if they want to eat it or not. But if we can provide foods that have, I guess, the most bang for their buck, that's going to be really beneficial. So liver is a big one that I like to promote. So whether it be, as like a blended, I call it a pate, but it's not really a pate, just blended liver. Or you can blend it through a puree if you're going to puree foods. Or like you said, JJ, you can grate it. So that's a good one. If you have frozen liver, you can grate it into foods, and you still cook the liver. It's grated raw, but you grate it raw into the foods, and then as you're cooking the foods, it will cook through. Or you can offer like pan-fried liver strips if you're doing baby-led weaning, or you can blend up the liver and offer it like onto finger foods as like a spread as well, is a really good option. So that's one, but any source of red meat especially is going to be high in iron. If liver makes you a bit squeamish, and that's not something that you want to do. So, lamb, beef, whatever, chicken's quite high in iron as well. Sardines as well. If you just got to remember that one's an allergen, but fine to start whenever you start solids. And, if you are going down a more plant-based route, then you can do things like tahini is really high. Red kidney beans are a good one. You can do lentils. with beans and lentils, you want to, if you can, try and soak them to get the most bang for the buck there, because soaking them will activate the phytase and reduce the phytic acid on the foods, which is kind of like, I guess, in layman's term, like a coating on the food that can stop some of the nutrients being absorbed. So if you can soak these foods, so pop them into, a bowl of water. I like to put a little bit of acidic something, so like a little bit of vinegar or lemon juice or whey, and then leave it as long as you can. So, overnight, or you might do it that morning or something. That will really help the little ones and us as well, to get the most nutrients out of the foods that we're offering. Parsley is another one as well. So you can get iron-rich foods from plant-based foods. You just need to be a bit more savvy about it as well. And the other thing with the non-heme foods, like your plant-based foods, is you want to also pair them with something high in vitamin C, because that will help to maximize the iron absorption. So you've just got to be mindful when you're offering your little one probiotic-rich foods like fermented foods. One, you want to just make sure that it's safe for your baby, because some, like especially homemade, can go a bit alcoholic. So just if you're buying store-bought, you're generally fine, but just be mindful of that. I also wouldn't offer kombucha to a baby because it's quite high in caffeine, so you probably want to steer away from that one. So things like your sauerkraut, beetroot kvass, kefir are really good as well. Like a coconut kefir is a low allergen one, or any like pickled vegetables. They can all be beautiful additions to a little one's diet, but they really don't need much. Like the smallest amount, you'd want to start with just the brine, for example, that it's in, a little bit into a puree or on a spoon, and then gradually work your way up, because sometimes too much of a good thing can be too much of a good thing and throw the gut bacteria out a little bit. So but I wouldn't worry too much about the immune boosting. Like the biggest thing is, whole foods, having lots of milk, and then just playing outside, sunshine, all of the lovely things that we want to do anyway.
Yeah. It's so funny because as you're mentioning all those foods, like those are all the great whole foods we should be eating as well. So, if we could look after ourselves that way and, pass it on to our babies as well.
And that's a big passion of mine too, is trying to promote foods that the whole family can enjoy. And I have actually found through like my work through Boob to Food is that it's a really, like, pregnancy, postpartum, having a baby starting solids is actually like a really good time to channel into the mother's health as well, because it's a time that we actually think, oh, I need to be more mindful about what I'm eating.
Yes.
And so I have found that, through providing recipes that the whole family can eat and benefit from, it's sort of, even though we're starting with a baby, it kind of then goes up to the mum and then stems through the whole rest of the family, which is really nice to see.
It does, doesn't it? And we noticed that at Goodness Me as well. A lot of new mums start trying all the different health foods because you want to feed your baby and your children that way. And then you start learning and it feeds in, which is a really nice journey and process as well.
We all love to push the boundaries every now and then. One more drink, one less hour of sleep, one less metre of social distancing. But no one loves it more than bugs. Germ bugs, bacterial bugs, viral bugs, microorganism bugs, plague bugs, they're all there. All just waiting for your immune system to let its guard down, and bang, they're in. That's why No Ugly have come up with No Ugly Immunity, a wellness tonic scientifically formulated to boost your immune system. We started with 100% of your daily intake of vitamin C, added some echinacea, some Pautu Manuka honey from the forgotten world of the Taranaki, 10 vitamins and minerals, Fibersol 2, and we made it isotonic so it gets into your system fast. Then we delicioused it up with lemon, honey and ginger and put it in a dark bottle to protect it from the light. No Ugly Immunity. Fast track your immune system back to gorgeous.
So, Luka, you mentioned purees before, and we'd love to get your thoughts on baby-led weaning versus purees.
Yeah, so there's really no right or wrong. This can be so funny, motherhood, isn't it? Like, I feel like everyone has an opinion on everything.
Yep.
I feel like this is one of those things that people seem to get very strong opinions on. The whole, do we do baby-led weaning, which is essentially a fancy word for finger foods, or do we go down the spoon feeding route? there really is no right or wrong. And I think that the most important thing is that you as a family feel comfortable in how you're offering your child food. So if you're trying to fit a mold, say, for example, of baby-led weaning because it's quote unquote the right thing to do, but it makes you feel so anxious and stressed. And if you're then, offering your child food and you're hovering over them and you're, ready to whack them on the back at any split second or ready to jam your fingers down their throat every time they make a little gag, then baby-led weaning is not for you. And the thing is that your little one, if they are getting whacked on the back every time they eat, or if they see their mum with this horrified look on her face the entire meal, or if they are getting their fingers down their throat, to stop them choking, then they're going to have some negative associations around food and mealtime too. And they're probably not going to want to eat because it's not a nice experience for them. So if it makes you really anxious, don't do it because that's more important. It's absolutely fine to start with purees. I started all of my children on purees. However, my middle child and my youngest child both very quickly declined purees and moved to finger foods very quickly. But my eldest son was happy to eat whatever, and so he was on purees for a few months. And I didn't know much about it then, but it just felt fine to do that, and I felt comfortable doing it that way. My only tip would be, if you are starting on some purees, that you really want to start introducing some finger foods by no later than 9 months. And the reason being is that there's a little bit of a window of opportunity with finger foods, because if you leave it too long, they can get a little bit fussy with textures. And you also do want to teach them how to chew and how to swallow and do the things that we need to do for eating. And whilst purees are fine, and there's lots of benefits to purees, like you can often get more nutrients into them. There's some studies have shown that baby-led weaning babies who never have purees are lower in iron. So there's definitely some benefits to puree, but the benefits to the baby-led weaning, I guess, are outweighing some of the benefits to the purees in terms of really just developing around eating. Mm-hmm. And whilst, it's really normal for babies to gag a lot when they start solids, and some babies will really gag a lot and some not so much, but they will all gag at some stage, and it always looks scary and petrifying. And, you're always like, is it choking?
Yeah.
But it is really developmentally normal, and there's so many protective mechanisms that a baby has against choking that it's something that they need to learn, and they need to learn how far they can put food down their throat. They need to learn that they need to chew their food. They need to learn these things. And whilst that gag reflex is in full throttle, that's the time that you want them to learn while all these protective mechanisms are at play. So if someone was feeding purees and, wanting to introduce some finger foods but felt really nervous about it, they could do things like offering foods that are resistible foods. So they're what we call hard munchable foods. They're foods that you're not really expecting them to eat, but just to play with and to learn and to map the mouth and to realize, where that gag reflex is and how far I can put things down my throat. So things like corn on the cob, for example, things like rib bones with a lot of the meat taken off it, but, that they can just chew on the bone. Lamb cutlets are really good, chicken drumsticks, watermelon rind with like a lot of the watermelon taken off, so giving them like that white bit with the green. You can also do things like pineapple cores. A great one is like a mango, I never know if it's pit or pip. Pit. I think it's a pit, a mango pit. With a lot of the mango taken off, can be a really great one because it's so big. And these foods, if you can imagine, they can't really choke on these foods. I mean, still obviously watch your child, but they're too big to shove in their mouth. And that's the whole point of them. You can also even just offer puree on a spoon and let them do it themselves. So you can load up the spoon and they can grab it from your hand and they can put it in their mouth, because that's still them learning. But yeah, by 9 months, I would be introducing at least some. And the aim is that by 12 months, our little ones are eating with the family. So there would be, obviously some foods are just naturally puree state, like yogurt. But generally speaking, they're eating family meals by 12 months. So, as much as I have a love-hate relationship with the saying food before one is just for fun, because there is some benefits to that saying, like, yes, food should be fun. And that is a really big benefit of food. Like, it should be fun and relaxing and enjoyable. And you want to make it that way for our little ones to set up good, healthy relationships with food. But I also dislike that saying because sometimes I think it can lead to the connotation that they don't need any nutrients from food and that we can offer whatever we want. And so I think I have a love-hate relationship with that saying.
Yeah. And Luca, you mentioned gagging and choking, and I know it's something I get so worried about as well. And I often will say to my husband, I think she's choking. And he's like, don't use that word. She's just gagging, because it creates a lot of panic for him. Can you explain for others out there what the difference is between? Because I think it's a lot of mums might get worried about it.
Yeah, for sure. It is stressful when you see it happening. It's always scary. The biggest thing to know is that with gagging, our babies is dramatic. So just remember that gagging is dramatic and choking is silent. So with a baby who is Caucasian, you'll see them go like a red color. You won't always see that in like darker skin babies, but if they're Caucasian, you'll see them go a red color. That's a big indicator that they're gagging. The biggest thing is that it's dramatic and loud, though, so this applies to all babies. So they will cough, they will splutter, they'll make that gagging sound that we make when we vomit, that exact same noise. They might vomit to get that food out. So they're basically doing everything they can in their body is trying to get that food back out. So they're kind of retching forward, if you can imagine. And so if they are making sounds, that means they're gagging, because when they're choking, they can't make any sounds. It's silent, which is what's scary about choking. And unfortunately, what sometimes can happen with choking is because it is silent, it's often unnoticed. It's if someone's not paying, I mean, it doesn't always happen this way, obviously, but if the baby's not in sight or something like that, it's just why we need to always set up safe meal times where we can see our little ones. But gagging means that the airway is not completely blocked. There's just something in the airway. And so basically, and it's not actually the same like airway that we're breathing in with gagging anyway. Choking's usually when the protective mechanisms, for some reason, the brain hasn't recognized that it needs to protect itself. And so choking, it goes down the wrong hole basically and then can block the airway. So that's why it can often happen with surprise, when a baby might take like a big chunk of something and it flies down the airway and into their and can block the airway. Or if they're running around, for example, and they're not concentrating what they're doing and the brain's not realizing that it needs to chew and it needs to has food in there, and it's the little one's preoccupied and running around, moving around, that's when a lot of choking can happen as well.
Right.
So with the gagging, the other thing to realize is that their gag reflex is actually quite far forward, so a lot further forward than adults. So when we're thinking about food making us gag, or fingers, for example, if you've ever tried to make yourself spew for any reason, you've got to shove them quite far down to make any difference. I've never actually successfully been able to do it because it's so far down. Not that, if you ever feel sick and you just want to get it out, you're pregnant in your first trimester and you're like, oh my gosh, I just need to spew and I'll feel better. Whereas little ones, it's actually so much further forward. It's actually like nearly around the halfway to their mouth. So they'll actually gag quite quickly, and then it will gradually move back as they get older. So that's something really important to remember, that it's not even sometimes anywhere near their airway. Like, they're often gagging again as a protective mechanism before they even have the chance.
Yep.
The biggest thing with our little ones is that their brains need to recognize that they have taken a bite of the food, and they need to recognize that there's food in their mouth, and they need to recognize that there's the size of the food and that they need to chew and learn how to map the mouth and where the food is in their mouth. And this is where those, hard resistible foods can be really beneficial, so that they can learn these skills. So when you do offer the finger foods, so that they've kind of got a little bit of awareness. But babies will naturally do this. Again, this is what can confuse people around that 4-month mark. They can naturally do this with like toys, for example, or their whole hand in their mouth, or their foot, or that they'll map the mouth with things that they're using. So that's a really beneficial skill for them to learn. Yeah.
So, Luca, what point do you think solids should take priority over breastfeeding or formula feeding?
I think a lot of people again get really hung up on an age for this. We can often be like, I guess the priority should be that milk is the priority until around that 12-month mark. But the whole idea of weaning, and it might not mean that you completely wean, but the whole idea of introducing solids is that gradually and over time, slowly, it takes place over breast milk, or formula. So for some babies, that might be like, I mean, I have a 20-month-old that still would prefer breast milk over food, but he's thriving and happy, and I am able to do that because I work from home and, I can offer him that. But, if you are having to sort of return to work or do something, then I would say that 12-month mark is what you want to aim for, that breast milk or formula, that I would be offering it prior to the solid foods. But I think it was just something that, if we can allow it to, will just naturally happen. So, for example, a lot of babies will have a milk feed as they wake up. So they might have one for that, after their big sleep at night, hopefully. They might have one in the morning, and then they might have one, if they're getting close to that 12-month mark, they're usually on 1 or 2 naps a day. They'll usually have one when they wake up from their naps, and then one before bed at night, for example. That's, or they might have 800 in between that, but that's generally what a lot of little ones will do. And you might just notice that as those naps drop off, or, they might wake up from their lunch nap and they might just be really distracted and happy to have food. Or they might have a really quick feed, like 2 seconds, and then they just want food. And just gradually and naturally, that will just happen over time without us needing to. I just get a lot of parents who just really overanalyze this a lot, and it's like you don't need to really think about it. It will just naturally happen. But I understand that some people, have restrictions where they need to go back to work or, don't want to feed anymore, and that's totally fine too. So at that stage, I would say 12 months if you can get to that point.
Yeah. And I mean, for mums out there who are breastfeeding, I think sometimes it can be really hard to look after yourself as well. Are there any tips, or like, can you even improve the nutritional value of your breast milk, or is that not true? Or what are your thoughts on that?
You definitely, like, nutrients can change definitely in your breast milk with what you eat. But if you're eating a balanced diet, you're generally going to be fine, and your breast milk's going to be fine. To be honest, it's usually you that will pay the price and not your breast milk. So your breast milk will usually take what it needs. And, your baby's generally okay. It's just us mums that can end up depleted.
Yeah.
A big one that I like to, that don't change your breast milk, but really important for our own health, a really big one is calcium. So we need to be really aware of our own calcium as a breastfeeding mum, because if our breast milk doesn't have enough, sometimes it can pull from our own bone stores. So that's just something to be mindful of. But yeah, I think for mums, I always say if you are breastfeeding, then I would recommend to stay on whatever prenatal supplement that you are on. For the entire duration of breastfeeding. If you don't, you can achieve this through a balanced diet, but if you're thinking I'm really time poor, I mean, a supplement's not going to meet all of the gaps, but it can provide a little bit of a buffer, which is good. But something like a whole food supplement can be really good just to, fill in a little bit extra. But basically, we can just get what we need from our own diets. It's just being mindful of actually eating and not eating crusts all day, and actually looking after ourselves, which again comes back to what I was talking about, providing babies foods that we can eat as well. So because like you said in the intro, no one has time to make more than one meal. No. One meal's enough.
More than enough, for sure. For sure. Do you have any other tips sort of for mum, while we speak of mum, what she can do to sort of have the support she needs postpartum? It's so heavy on our bodies and everything that comes with birth and breastfeeding. Are there any other tips that you recommend?
I think my biggest thing would be to lean on your village as much as you can. We're not meant to parent alone, and it's really hard. And especially when you have more than one child and you're trying to meet everyone's needs, and yours often get pushed right to the bottom of the wayside. So if you can, for the postpartum, I would really try and, either you organize someone to do it, or hopefully they take the initiative and get a meal train so that you can get lots of beautiful, nourishing meals delivered to you, just to take one last thing, one less thing off of your mind. And then that way you're going to be really nourished and not have to think about it. So that would be my biggest tip for a postpartum mum, is to, lean on other people for support. And just remember as well that nutritious meals don't have to be complicated and complex and have lots of ingredients. Like, sometimes the most simple foods are the most nutritious, and we don't need to overanalyze the nutrition of everything, but it's fine just to eat eggs, for example. They're so nutritious and amazing, and if you feel like that every day, have that every day. Just try and balance it up a little bit with some other things. You might just put some other things on the side, for example, or you might feel like all you can eat is carbs in that first 4 months of breastfeeding, especially. You're so hungry. But it's important to listen to our bodies at that time. It's using a lot of energy and it needs a lot of more carbs. So listen to it and don't deplete it in this time. And yeah, I think if you can, try and bulk cook as well is a really important one, because if you do have energy one day, or you might have got sleep one day, or your baby might be napping one day, then if you can do some bulk cooking, so that those days where you have had no sleep, or your baby's having witching hour for 3 hours and you can't get dinner on the table, you've got something in the freezer. So a chest freezer is always my number one thing I think mums should buy so that they can do this.
A nice tip. And those meal trains are such a lifesaver.
Such a blessing.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. So there's a website called Meal Train. A lot of people
don't
know about it. It's actually called Meal Train, and it's so easy to use. My group of friends, we've got a lot of babies. Most of us have 3 kids, and so there's been many meal trains. But it's so amazing because what goes around comes around. I ended up having meals for I think it was 6 weeks. I had meals every night for.
The best, and you just love your friends so much for it.
Oh yeah, it's the best gift you can get, isn't it?
Yes.
And I think because we had all had multiple children, we had a pretty down pat the system. We had a little esky out the front. We didn't even have to talk to people. If you wanted to, you'd leave the door open. If you didn't, you'd shut the door. No one was offended. Everyone got it. Drop the meals and run. And so it was just really good the third time around. We were like, this is so nice. I didn't want it to end.
And don't be afraid to ask people as well. If they are asking to help, tell them that they can practically give you a meal or a voucher for somewhere, or something like that, if they don't feel comfortable cooking, or if you have certain dietary requirements. But it is so helpful, such a game changer. Speaking of food, we know that we love your recipes, and I feel so inspired whenever I look at the latest one you've uploaded on Boob to Food. So thank you for inspiring so many people. But I just wanted to ask, is there a meal that you've had or that you've made and served to your family in the past couple of weeks that's been a real winner that you can share with us?
I think my biggest hit lately, I've been doing a pulled pork recipe, and they've absolutely been loving it. So it's pulled pork slow cooked all day and stewed with apples and bone broth. So really nutritious, but I just love that it can be made once, and then you've got a few nights of dinners that you can change up into different things. So they love it, Mexican night, or we have burgers one night, or we had it with I don't know if you'd still call it a Buddha bowl, I guess, rice and veggies and things like that. So yeah, that's been their favorite meal that I can share with you.
Sounds so good. And do you slow cook that in a slow cooker or in the oven?
We cook it in the oven. Do you want the specifics of the recipe, or do you want me to send it to you?
I will follow you up for the specifics so people can look it up. But just curious.
Look, you can do it in a slow cooker. I personally hate slow cookers.
Okay. Haven't had a good experience.
No. I know some people love them. I really tried.
Yeah.
I just always find the food very bland and watery. I just haven't nailed. Anyway, I'm probably doing it wrong, but I have a cast iron pot. It's 20-something years old, a Le Creuset pot. And I always do it in there, so then I can brown off all the meat and the onion and apples and things like that. I brown it all off first, and then I put the liquid in. I always leave the meat out a little bit, so You can get a bit of that. I like that when it goes all caramelizing and get a bit of a crust on it. And then put the lid on that, and then I put that in the oven at like 140 for about 6 hours, 7 hours, and I just leave it all day running. And yeah, then at the end, I shred it all up, take the lid off, and then put it back in the oven on a higher heat, and then let that reduce a bit, and then that fat will kind of turn into a caramelizing, yummy meal.
Delicious.
But you can't get in a slow cooker. But anyway,
just really selling it.
Sorry, do you use a slow cooker? I don't know if I'm the only one.
Yeah, I do. To be honest, I haven't quite nailed it either. A couple of recipes, but I don't know if it's my slow cooker or if it's me. But yeah, no, I have a Le Creuset and they are amazing. So
yeah, and I mean, you don't need an expensive Le Creuset.
Yeah.
Like I only have mine because it was a hand-me-down. It's been very old. It was my husband's nan's.
Lovely.
And you can get them on Facebook Marketplace really cheap, actually. They're always on there. But there's heaps of cheaper brands that you can get that are the same thing, like just a cast iron pot that can, go on the cooktop and then can also go into the oven. So I think that's a really good thing for your kitchen. I use mine nearly every day.
Thank you so much for all your information and wisdom and tips. It's been so helpful, and we'd love you to share. If people want to get in touch or find out more, where should they go?
Yeah, so we're most active on Instagram at Boob to Food. I've tried TikTok. I just can't get into it.
I think you're very good.
TikTok, oh man, I have like 10 things. Anyway, and our website, www.boobtofood.com.
Great. Thanks so much,
for having
Luka.
me. It's been a
It
pleasure.
was great to chat to you.
Yeah, thank you for all that you do as well and continue to do moving forward. Thanks so much, Luka. Liked this podcast? Please give us a 5-star review and share it with someone who you think would benefit from it. We want to help as many people as possible live healthier lives. This podcast is general in nature. We aren't doctors or health practitioners. But if this podcast has prompted something for you, we really encourage you to make an appointment with your health practitioner and get advice that is tailored to you. This podcast is recorded on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples.